Our next question is, I feel like there is so much negativity in the world, especially now, and it just doesn't stop. Not saying that suicide is a thing I'd consider, but when it just seems like the bad news won't stop, what are things to do to remain hopeful? Eileen, what would you say?
Wow. First of all, this is a great question and so timely. 2020, I think, has been a challenge for most of us, if not all of us. This is a very different year, and we're all having to live very different lives. And there has been an overflow of negative news, depressing news, terrible situations that have occurred during this year, especially. And so I think this is something that most of us, if not all of us, can relate to right now. What do we do? How do we find hope? First of all, I would say that we all have different things that work for us. So, what works for your best friend may or may not be what works for you. I would say you have to find that one thing or multiple things that make you feel good, that make you happy. Internally, you have to build your happiness into your day. And I would say it's something you want to practice every day, doing that one little thing, experiencing, taking pleasure in that one little thing that's going to make your day better, or multiple things. Again, I kind of liken it to creating your own personal bubble of happiness. And so, whatever that is for you, some people like walking, watching movies, coloring, guided imagery, meditation, visiting with friends who have, a positive outlook on life that are going to be uplifting and not negative. Listening to positive podcasts. There's a plethora of ideas for what you can do. But don't feel like you have to do what everyone else is doing or what other people say is the thing to do. You have to find your own individual thing. Find that thing. And I would say sometimes it's a good thing to tune out the rest of the world. And that's why I call it your little bubble of happiness. And I've talked to many people who are dealing with trying to tune out the world a little bit, limiting the amount of news they're listening to, limiting the amount of conversations they're having around depressing or difficult topics. And so it may sound simple or easy, and I know it's not, but it's one way of coping or finding hope. We can find hope in those things that give us joy, whether it's our children, our spouse, our family, friends. Hang on to the things that are positive, that give you hope. And incidentally, hope is a huge factor. One of the leading precipitants around suicide attempts has to do with hopelessness. So you can almost predict or look at hopelessness rates. So as far as predictors for suicide attempts as well, people who feel hopeless often attempt suicide more often. So again, finding our own hope, but it's going to be different for each person, and that's okay. So we have to each find what works for us. So try different things, and if they don't work for you, that's okay. Try something else that makes you happy, and it can be something physical, spiritual, emotional, whatever it is. Whatever works for you is the right thing.
I would just add, coping. I liked the definition that coping means to invest our own conscious effort to solve personal or interpersonal problems in an effort to master, minimize, or tolerate stress and conflict. And I think, this year has been a trying times, and that coping just with day-to-day activities, the stress around the world, bigger issues, smaller issues, they're abundant. And so I think that really investing in ourselves to try and increase our tolerance to that stress is really important. So I think about getting support, talking to someone, whether it be a friend or a professional, relaxing. Think about, what does relaxing look like for you? Relaxing activities may include practicing meditation, maybe relaxing is running for you, sleeping, and problem solving, thinking about okay, what's the problem? That's oftentimes, just as challenging. And then thinking about a way to solve that problem, thinking about potential solutions. And I think we both like one of the coping mechanisms of humor. sometimes making light of situations, gaining perspective, and preventing a situation from becoming overwhelming. And then there's also one of my favorites, which is physical activity, because it really allows you to, energize and get those endorphins kicking, and really takes you out of your present situation. It makes you mindful, and it really is a nice escape. And one last thing I would add is there are an incredible amount of resources around coping and meditation and positive psychology. And so I really encourage, to tap into those resources. Oftentimes they can be through social media, podcasts. They really run the range of mediums so that they're accessible for a large population. I would also say when we talk about resources and the topic of suicide, there's always help. And so, if it becomes an issue where anyone is even having suicidal thoughts, idealizing suicide, the National Suicide Hotline is an excellent resource. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's 1-800-273-TALK or 273-8255. And I encourage, people to use that resource.